Like making sure your kids are buckled correctly in the right seat for their age and size. Learn more at nhtsa.gov/the.
Okay, still got 2 minutes.
Okay.
TSA.gov/the right seat.
Brought to you by NHTSA and the Ad Council.
Don't you wish your life came with a warning app?
Stop. That dog does not want to be petted.
Just a little heads up before something bad happens.
Move your coffee cup away from your computer.
Oh, no.
So you can have more control.
Stop. You're texting your boss by mistake.
Uh-oh. Well, life doesn't always give you time to change the outcome, but prediabetes does. With early diagnosis and a few healthy changes like managing your weight, getting active, stopping smoking, and eating healthier, you can stop prediabetes before it leads to type 2 diabetes. It's easy to learn your risk. Take the 1-minute test today at doihaveprediabetes.org.
Warning. The cap is loose on that ketchup.
Ugh. Don't wait. You have the power to change the outcome. Visit doihaveprediabetes.org today. That's doihaveprediabetes.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council and its prediabetes awareness partners.
Serving part-time in the Army National.
All right, 1 minute.
Allowed first for me. The education assistance I received made it possible for me to be the first person in my family to go to school and graduate debt-free. That education helped get me to the first day at my dream job, a job that I can still hold while I serve part-time. That job, plus the other benefits possible from the Army National Guard, helped me become a first-time homeowner. Also, part of my role as a National Guard soldier means I know that I can be one of the first to respond and help my community if disaster ever strikes. I'm extremely proud that I get to serve my community. And that first step I took by joining the Army National Guard has made all the difference in my life.
See you.
Talk to your local recruiter
Devin,
or
do you mind if I call your name on there?
nationalguard.com
If you
to
do, I
find
won't.
out what first
That's fine.
Oh,
to do in
okay.
the Army National
Are
Guard.
you trying to come into radio, Devin?
Yep, and we got
As a
10
person-
seconds.
As a
Army
personality?
National Guard, aired by
Yep.
Broadcasters
Then
Association
I
and this
will,
station.
call your name more,
You're
okay?
listening to WC.
Oh, appreciate it.
If
Thank
you'd
you.
like.
And
If
we're
you
coming up.
would- No, I would do that.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. Yes, we can. We can change the world.
You can bring it up just a little bit.
Can you hear that?
Yeah, a little louder.
How about now?
Yep.
Excellent.
Gotta save the children. We can't wait. Let's change the world. I am
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. Got Devin and Drake is my engineer. We're coming to you today from WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. Devin, did you have a great weekend? Always catch
I was
it.
working hard, Santita. You know how it goes.
You didn't have any time off. Me either. So let's roll and rock with this, everybody. And what about these Bears, Devin? Are they going to win ever?
Hopefully on Thursday.
Okay. Check in with me on Thursday. You call in. Okay. Let's
Okay.
Goodness gracious. Oh, bless their hearts. But everybody, hey, it's a joy to be with you on WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. Meet my morning stars, Robert and Kenneth and Mark. Oh, the guys are up early this morning. All right now. Early. Shirley from beautiful Philadelphia. I cannot forget that, Shirley. I got you, boo. And everybody, please like and share the show. We're going to talk about these poll numbers. These poll numbers from regarding the president. President Biden's poll numbers are, everybody is now really worried, no less. A giant in the Democratic Party, a giant political operative, David Axelrod, has called upon the president to not run. What do you think about that? Because a lot of people did not vote for him. They voted against. President Trump. So there's that. But I want to know what your thoughts are. Call me at 773-763-9278 because his numbers are not good. They're not good. And we're going to be talking about that. But then we're also going to talk about this pro-Palestinian demonstration in Washington, D.C. More than 300,000 people turned out. Now, you get those kind of numbers, hundreds of thousands pro-Palestinian demonstrations in Europe and around the world. upwards of 1 million, but not in the United States. It seems that we've turned a corner. We're going to be starting our conversation talking about that as we're sending targeted missiles to the Middle East. What's going on, everybody? We Americans are calling for a ceasefire, but our munitions industry and our politicians, our elected officials are not. Call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-9278. And I want to thank you for turning out. Wow, we couldn't receive everybody at Congressman Jonathan Jackson's town hall meeting on the migrant crisis, housing, healthcare. And he also had people from the IRS there to help you with your taxes, people from the healthcare sector to help you. Social Security. He's going to have another one in November. I'm going to be there as well. And I'm looking forward to that. And people were very, very, very vocal about how they feel about the migrant issue. So I want you to call me about that too. It's just a whole melange. I'm going to be taking all your calls today at 773-763-9278, 773-763-9278. Kenneth, you said great job. It was great. I love you, Soror Perkins. Praying for you. My soror lost her mother. Well, her mother went into eternity. But we're so glad that she is in the arms of God. And I pray every comfort upon my beloved soror, big sister, Marion Perkins, who's now a judge. Oh, we love her. Of course, the ladies of Delta Sigma Theta, we do it. But all the brothers and sisters in the Divine Nine are in the mix. Love you, Marion. Love you, love you, love you. Everybody call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT. And let's get to some of these headlines on the Santita Jackson Show. Boy, oh boy, oh boy, there is so much going on in the world today, and I want to know what your thoughts are about everything. Donald Trump will testify in his civil fraud trial in New York today. It's $250 million, everybody. He's accused of inflating his net worth to get better deals from banks and insurers. Trump faces a $250 million fine and could be forced to sell his New York properties and never be allowed to practice business in New York again. No former president, according to this Washington Post report, has testified as a defendant in court in over a century. He's running for president again and is doing quite well in the polls. Why do you think that is? Call me at 773-763-9278. Palestinian officials say that nearly 10,000 people have been killed in Gaza, everybody. 40% of them are the elderly, women and children. More than 4,000 children have been killed, according to the Palestinian according to Palestinian officials. What do you think about that, everybody? Is it time for a ceasefire? 10,000 people, everybody. The U.S. Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, traveled to the West Bank. Wow. And Baghdad in an effort to contain the conflict. Will he be able to do it? The CIA director is in Israel to meet with intelligence officials. At least 157 people were killed in an earthquake in Nepal, sending all of our love to our brothers and sisters there. What about the 300,000 people who were at the Free Palestine March in Washington, D.C.? You had marches of equal size, if not larger, in London, in New York on Saturday. Everybody call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-9278. The UN ambassador from Israel is slammed for saying that there is no humanitarian crisis in Gaza. The U.S. Court of Appeals, in Illinois, they allowed the assault weapons ban to stand. Thank heaven. Speaker Johnson wants to, in secret, gut Social Security. That report coming out of Washington as well. He's eager, according to the Alliance for Retired Americans, he is eager to cut Social Security behind closed doors. And those are some of the headlines on the Santita Jackson Show as we look at snow showers today in Chicago. It will be 66 degrees. Nice, beautiful day, but it's going to kind of go back and forth. You know how we do in Chicago. Minneapolis, St. Paul, 52 degrees. Rain showers. Unbelievable. It's 52 degrees right now. Not in a few hours. In the NFL, the Vikings 31, the Falcons 28, the Saints 24, Devin, the Bears 17. In the NBA, the Jazz will be playing the Bulls and the Celtics will be facing off against the Timberwolves. And those are some of the headlines on the Santita Jackson Show. Everybody like and share, like and share, like and share. I want to share this with you. You know, one of I love the Bible, not just as literature, but as a guidebook. Indeed, when I went away to college, my father, you know, your parents, when you're walking out the door, literally, they always have that one more thing they want to tell you. And my father said, well, if I haven't told you everything, you know, including I love you every day, uh, I missed something. He said, but just this, you know, you have the talk. Then the talk that he had, just as I was walking out the door, getting in the car to drive to Washington, he said, you know, Daddy wants you to find a church. I said, oh, okay. He said, no, 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 no. I need you to get anchored in your relationship with God, because the storms of life hit, and they hit without warning. And if you are not anchored in the Lord, you will surely drift away. I said, wow, okay. Okay. Now, of course, he showed up at the dorm days later. I was in bed on Sunday, but I didn't miss too many church services after that. Because he said, I mean, my father's got a soft touch. He said, now, you know what? It's not that Daddy's trying to be overbearing. He said, but baby, trust me when I say, in life, things happen, and they do happen, everybody. But my great-grandmother, his grandmother, said to me, as long as the hurt that happens to you does not happen in you, you're going to be okay. And I hope we will begin to take that lesson to heart. Take that lesson to heart, because what we're watching in the world today, particularly in the Middle East, is hurt people hurting each other, right? And you've had the Jewish people who have been removed from countries through the millennia, and they're hurting, and they've become hurtful, and it breaks my heart. And as a sister beloved to that community, we try to tell them to turn another way, and I hope that they will do that. And you see more and more of our Jewish brothers and sisters. Don't conflate them with the right-wing government that you have in Israel right now. They're fighting for their lives right now. They're saying, wait a minute, we're going the wrong way. Don't do that. But you know, we can all do that in our lives. We can all seek vengeance instead of justice. We all have these revenge fantasies. I'll put myself on Front Street. Oh, how I can get you back, or I can't wait until you get gotten back, which is just as bad. And that's not the way it's supposed to work. Vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. Let it go. You work on cleaning out your heart. You work on becoming the best person you can be. And the Lord will work it out, because these are lessons for all of us to learn. You hear me say over and over and over and over again. From the Bible, we've been told that you have a seat at the table. You don't have to be on the menu. You can have a seat at the table. But it will be in the presence of your enemy, because your enemy is God's child too. They've got some lessons to learn too. And interestingly enough, God doesn't sit you at the table with your friend, sits you at the table with your enemy, because guess what? Your enemy is you. They are your polar opposite. And you will find that if you resolve your grievances with the person with whom you are most at odds, you become the best of friends, because you're very much alike. So let's think about that today. Think about that today. Whatever your faith system is, whether you have one or not, just don't let the hurt that happens to you happen in you. Or if it does, ask the Lord or ask the higher power. Just really work on becoming a good person and cleaning out your own heart. We can see that unclean hearts can destroy all of humanity, and it does not have to be so. And those are the words of the day. My good news. The good news is that we are but a thought away from making the kingdom of heaven real on earth as it is in heaven. We can do that. We can end war. We can have a ceasefire, and we can have peace. Not just quiet. Peace. Without justice, you will have no peace. And I'm not just praying for that day. I think we all need to work for that day, starting now. God bless you, everybody. Dr. Shanina Knighton, how you doing today?
I'm doing good, Santita. How are you?
I am doing well. What is on your mind? You know what? I have a question for you, just really, really quickly. Now COVID is endemic, right? It's just here. If you have come into
Yes.
contact with someone who has COVID, who has had COVID, should you isolate yourself or what should you do?
I always go with the mindset of assume that you have it and assuming that you have it and you don't want to spread it to others, which means instituting a lot of the practices that we had before. I think right now, giving, like, let's say the mutation of it, there are going to be more people where, like, let's say is more serious cases than others. But for the most part, it's practicing hand hygiene. It is continuing to mask so you don't spread it to others. The last variant, which is the J variant, has more days for which it is deemed infectious. Okay. So it actually lasts for 4 more days to where somebody would have like the viral shedding where they would still be more contagious than the prior variants. So it may not be as severe, but it's highly transmissible. Of course, now you don't have anyone that's screening or looking at strains in terms of which particular one someone has, especially if you take it home test, right? But of the ones that they have took, then that is the way for them to detect. They are still detecting information about the strains and a mutation through stool. So when I'm saying stool, meaning like sewage. So they're able to actually look at the sewage system itself and be able to see what is the concentration of COVID within particular areas. So I do recommend to people, as soon as someone declares that they have had it or they are sick for an extended period of time, assume that you have come in contact with them and are at risk of getting ill too. And I suggest moving as if you have it so that way you're not transmitting it to others. We know that we cannot see germs. We cannot see the things that are harming us. And so you have to be vigilant about hand hygiene and assume as if those germs are already there. That's one of the big challenges that we have right now, which is why people are still sneezing, coughing, without using etiquette. People will tell you that they got allergies and it's not a cold. People will cough and tell you it's not a cough. It's completely unbelievable because after 3 years of what we just went through, it goes to show again that our system has failed us on the basic practices of infection prevention and control because people have now reverted back to old habits of not cleaning their hands correctly, if cleaning their hands at all, as well as not even paying attention to the environmental factors. And now, when I talk about infection prevention and control, similarly to how I did prior to the pandemic, Santita, people don't want to hear about it. And in fact, they actually might get offended if I say something about it. And so it's mighty interesting because there's that saying, that history repeats itself. And it's like I'm watching that play out time and time again until we come across the next germ that could potentially be a pandemic. And I always say stay ready so we don't have to get ready. But my concern is like, are we truly there in that space of where we'll be able to take care of ourselves? And unfortunately, I think it'll be too late.
Well, I've got about 3.5 more minutes for you. I just had to ask you. I mean, so should you be in isolation for 10 days if you've come into contact with someone? What do you do? Just real quick.
Isolation for 10 days, being honest, is not realistic for most. Meaning people would have to burn up their vacation time. They would have to burn up their PTO time. There's a significant amount of barriers the first time that they put that in place. We don't have any, money, any COVID dollars anymore that's allowing employers the ability to let people stay home. So because none of those things are in place, I still remind people that if they must go out, if they must go to work, is making sure that they are incorporating infection prevention and control practices so that way they don't have to worry about contaminating others.
Well, the last 3 minutes belong to you. What do you want to share with us today?
I honestly want to just say that mental health is a part of prevention. And to be cognizant about taking care of yourself. I know a little while ago, you definitely dropped some heavy gems in regards to what's going on around the world. And right now, there's a lot going around the world. There's a lot going on within our circles. There's a lot going on, let's say, within health. And this is something that's not talked about as much. And so before, you could go to the doctor, right? And there would be, let's say, screenings of phrases like, my life is worthless, or I feel alone. Or you would notice that people would give away valuable stuff. And those would typically be the cardinal signs. But the cardinal signs aren't the same anymore, because there's a heavy reliance on social media. And so as a result of social media, noticing when people start to post very heavy online, how they use social media. People also, too, because of the heavy use of social media, they automatically assume that they're checking on somebody. So because somebody might post, let's say 20 pictures and they look happy in a picture, unconsciously we think that that's checking on somebody instead of picking up the phone to call them and say, how are you really doing? Opposed to just being able to look at a post. And so just saying that, we don't check on each other enough. It's the holiday season. There are people that are missing their loved ones. There are individuals that are going to be alone because this is a lonely season for them because they may not have anyone. People may have lost someone. People may be battling with what's going on overseas and just everything that's going on in the world. And so I'm just reminding people to check in on others. It is very important. All of us think differently, we behave differently, and we handle stress differently. And we all have different backgrounds in terms of what influences us. So I'm just reminding people, please check on your people. You never know what an impact that you could have on someone that feels isolated, someone that's sick, or someone that's having some severe changes that are impacting their lives.
No, I love that because, now we're texting instead of calling. But call somebody, just call them. Hearing someone's voice, just even if you are on the run and you say, you know what, I just called to say I love you. I just called to say I care. Do you know that could change someone's life? You don't know what that person on the other end of the phone is going through. You don't know. So I want to thank you for that because that too is part of our mental health, don't you think? 30 seconds.
Absolutely. Mental health is a part of prevention. I cannot emphasize that enough, that when it comes down to being able to stay balanced, finding things that make you happy, finding hobbies, finding outlets is very important. There are a lot of stresses that are happening right now, whether that is financial, that is physical, that is emotional. There are quite a few things that are going on. And so it is very important that you are also assessing your coping skills. If you write when you're stressed out and that's not working, it's understandable to seek out help when you know that your general coping mechanisms are not working. Being able to state that out loud, I am ineffectively coping right now, is an important step in that process to you being able to seek help or being able to seek resources. It's also important to ask other people, well, what do you do when you typically stress? Is that working? If they tell you it's not working, continue to check on your friends and check on your people, because that right there could be the cardinal sign that they're not doing too well and they don't have an idea of how they're going to get out of their situation. And unfortunately, we don't want that to end in self-hurt or suicide.
Love you, Dr. Shanina Knighton. Hey, Dr. Nina, HEYDRNINA, HEYDRNINA. Hey, Dr. Nina, follow her. And why don't you reach out to her and tell her you love her today? Because I certainly do, my dear sister. And Soror. Ooh,
I love you too. I love you too.
All right, everybody, let's talk about the Palestinian march. Let's talk about the ceasefire that Americans want that they're not getting. Let's talk about these poll numbers. Biden is getting beaten in the polls by Trump, who's on trial. Go figure. Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show in just a minute.
Yeah, I'm going to stick around for that because I ain't going to lie. It's only in America. Only in America.
Well, it's and a few other places in Western Europe, and it's real off. It's just not where people are,
I get it, but do you, and I don't think people are wrapping their minds around this, but the fact that there's only two people being discussed in this situation and there are other candidates, I think is just completely disgusting to me.
I'm glad you discussed it.
I'm for real. I don't understand why that's not resonating with people. The fact that somebody already decided mentally, whoever the powers are, that these are the two candidates, is if there aren't other people that are qualified, that have qualified to run, qualified to be, let's say, candidates, and we don't even, like, there's no discussion of them. There's no platforms that are allowing us to even be able to understand who these people are and what the premise of them running. And what concerns me is we have a digital divide in our country. So for people that don't have those digital resources to even be able to look up these candidates, it's almost like they have to go with what they're being told, and that's scary.
But that is, it's always been thus. Now you understand how they knocked who is it out of the you see how they jammed Reverend, how they jammed Bernie, how they jammed the People's Choices. You know, I mean, that's why, you know, this stuff is a sham, and people need to be sick of it. Yeah, I said it.
I know I am.
And I'll add more to it before I take anything away. How about that? Yeah, I mean, no, I mean, it's just enough already. Enough. But it is coming out. I mean, Biden's poll numbers are just, they're awful. And anytime you have David Axelrod saying, hey, man, you need to get out of this thing, that is like, oh, my Lord.
I know. Where Kamala been at? Because I
sending Dr. Gibbs, Attorney Patillo, and Dwight McKee through.
Well, you know, the thing is, she's not a free agent. She's on a team, right? You know, and so there's that. You know, and I think we have to be clear on that. I mean, whatever your personal druthers are, she's his vice president. So we're going to be talking about that like right now. And Dr. Gibbs, how you doing?
Good morning, Santita. Glad to be on.
It's always a joy to have you. And what we're going to do first, I want to just ask you all about the Palestinian protest, because it was so massive that I just, you know, said it bears, okay, pardon me, you know, chug-a-lugs in the background. Dwight McKee.
Morning.
Robert Patillo.
Good morning.
Good morning. Okay, you got Dr. Knighton. Say hello to everybody, because she wanted to hear what y'all have to say.
Good morning. Look,
60 seconds, everyone.
And, you know, do me a favor, Devin.
Yes.
Please mute me, because I'm going to be recording. I'm downloading something.
Okay.
As soon as I go to the panel.
Okay, you got it.
Thank you. But this is something that was it was predicted. We already said this was going to happen.
10 seconds, everyone.
Okay. Okay, you can hear something in the background.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Santita Jackson Show, WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station. This from the New York Times. President Biden, I read, is trailing Donald Trump in 5 of the 6 most important battleground states. Just 1 year before the 2024 election. You do know the election is 1 year from now. 52 weeks. I mean, that's it. That is it. So I want to hear from Dr. David Gibbs, Dwight McKee, and Robert Patillo about it. Indeed, this is something that Robert Patillo, you and Dwight McKee foresaw. And given Dr. Gibbs' understanding of history, I'm sure you're not surprised. Let me start with you, Robert Patillo. What is this about? You see, 22% of the black vote Biden has. He has an even higher number in the Hispanic community. He's slipping with young people. I mean, talk to me. What is happening here? What has happened? What did happen? Wait a minute.
President Biden's trying to
Don't
do
forget
something.
David Axelrod. who told him not to run on Twitter. Oh, gosh. What is going on?
Absolutely. President Biden's attempted to do something that is something of a bygone era, which is trying to govern as a political moderate. He is trying to split the middle in a country that is no longer split down the middle. We're now a country which is motivated by bases. President Trump runs directly to his base, and because of that, he has 100% support just about within the Republican base. Just look at the primary field where he's up by 50 and 60 points against his competitors. President Biden has had a very different strategy, very much a Clinton re-election strategy from the mid-'90s, where he started running closer and closer towards the center and to the center-right on issues. Everything from wall funding to funding for the military-industrial complex, not being delivered on student loan reform. And because of this, various parts of the Democratic base have started pulling away from them. You can look at the Muslim community around the country where they're very much not in favor of President Biden's very traditional American policy of having 100% support of Israel no matter what they do. You can look at the support for the Ukraine war cratering nationwide. You can also look at the fact that many people on the progressive side of the aisle feel that they've been sold out for their 100% loyalty. And then when you look at the Tea Partiers and the Freedom Caucus people, it seems that by them being obstinate, they get exactly what they want in the American political system, that they have more power by being kind of flies in the ointment than progressives get by playing by the rules and doing what they're supposed to do for the party. By no means do I think this is too late or somehow cannot be reformed and fixed. We saw something similar going into the midterms in 2022 when Biden was able to get a series of legislative actions done that really did pull him out of that hole. But I do think that the leadership of the party is going to have to realize this idea of running back towards the center and finding all these moderate and independent voters in the upper Midwest that are going to come back for the Democratic Party, that ship has sailed. As Mitch McConnell said, the era of bipartisanship is over. There is no point in trying to bring these people back. They have gone off the MAGA cliff. It's more important to motivate your own base and be able to deliver for African Americans, for young people, for women, for other minority groups, and pushing up turnout, pushing up enthusiasm among the base, as opposed to trying to go get these other voters who are never coming back to the party.
Call us at 773-763-9278, 773-763-9278. What do you think is going on here? I mean, before I pivot to Dwight, what about the black vote? I mean, what in particular? I mean, because the black vote is at the center, it's at the core of the Democratic Party. And, you know, instead of giving Reverend the credit for it, they'll give him the blame, instead of understanding that the only portal into national politics in the 80s for black people was the Democratic Party. That was the horse to ride. We even had young black Republicans for Jesse Jackson, headed by none other than Armstrong Williams. Talk to me. What do you think is happening with the black and Hispanic voter? I mean, and why in particular is the black vote growing for Trump? Robert Patillo.
Well, one, the Democrats haven't delivered on anything they said they were going to do for black people. So it's not really a mystery. You said you're going to do voting rights, you didn't do voting rights. You said you're going to do criminal justice reform, you didn't do criminal justice reform. You said we at least have a study committee on reparations, we did nothing on reparations. If you don't do anything for somebody, you can't really be surprised when they're not super enthusiastic to turn out and vote for you. And also, talking to some younger Gen Z voters, younger African-American Gen Z voters don't have the same negative view of Trump that many other people do. Trump's being supported by Sexy Red, the hottest young artist on in music, being supported by Waka Flocka Flame, being supported by Little Uzi Vert, Lil Wayne, Woe Vicky, all sorts of younger Gen Z kind of hip-hop music figures are supporting him. And because in their minds, they see Trump as not through the political spectrum, but they see him through the spectrum of, well, when during COVID, he sent free checks to us every week. And everyone had PPP loans, and everybody had EIDL loans, and people were, not having to go to work, and nobody had to go to school. There's a very different view of Trump, and then also he's a pop culture figure. They see him as being associated with being persecuted by this political system, getting on stage, telling your mama jokes about people, calling Chris Christie fat. And this is not me, it's not conjecture. This is exactly what they said when they talk about why they support Trump. So I think Democrats are going to have to understand that they've now become the old, boring party, and there's going to be a cultural shift when, you know, the faces of the Democratic Party are all in their 80s and 90s with Joe Biden and Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer and Steny Hoyer. Republicans have become the young, cool, kind of counterculture party, and that's something Democrats are going to understand going forward. They can't simply play by the old playbook.
Dwight McKee, your thoughts?
Well, I agree with everything Robert said, but add this caveat is he's done a remarkable thing Biden has, is he's managed to create his own perfect storm. He's managed to alienate every group that's dear to him, which is phenomenal when you think about it. I mean, he alienated the black community and Hispanic community around the reparations issue and around immigration. He alienated the young people by being a warmonger and taking a position such a position, pro-Israeli position, and pro-Ukrainian position. He alienated the Palestinian community, which is the bulk of these communities in these border states that he needs, by being so aggressively pro-Israel. He's alienated so many of the people that he had depended upon him to really support him. He really did go after white women, which is those people who least love him are white women. That is kind of Trump's crowd, and when you cater to them, you get no return. But what you do is you lose support on other people who are not them. Most of the people who support him were not them. They were not white women. And so, you know, he went for the dope and got the dopey dope. He lost those people who he may could have courted, but he didn't gain those people that he did court. So he's now probably one of the least most popular presidents, and it's falling in the polls every day. And every day that goes by, he falls and further down. He also, you know, my whole adage was, please don't make a monster a martyr, which is what they managed to do very, very successfully with Trump, is they turned him to a martyr by trying to, in every way they could, keep him off the ballot, keep him from being, you know, arrest him, put him on these trials. What he's successfully done is, particularly for black men, is turn him into a hero, because now he's an anti-establishment guy. He's a fighter. He's the one that's trying to lead the people out of the wilderness into the promised land. And so, you know, rather than try to beat him at the ballot box, they try to beat him in the courts. And it's backfired on them, as we all predicted that it would.
Dr. Gibbs, are you surprised by these poll numbers, by these findings?
Am I? Yeah, I'm surprised they're not worse. I am surprised by it.
Dr. Gibbs,
I'm surprised they're not worse.
why are you? Well, before yes, Dr. Gibbs.
All right. Yes, hi. I think that one of the things that Democrats have always been almost unaware of and sort of willfully ignored is there is a sizable number of voters, especially working class voters, who are sort of left on economic issues, want redistributionist issues. There's truly been a lot of Republicans now who are really kind of breaking with the sort of free market economics of Reagan and are really very concerned with the concentration of wealth. is often emphasized by sort of pundits like Tucker Carlson, for example. And so on the one hand, you have this sort of left on economics, but sort of more to the center on sort of cultural issues like sexuality and things like that. People forget a lot of people in America are very religious, and that's certainly true of people of color, including African Americans, are religious. And the Democrats are just not able to talk to people like that, not very effectively at least. And they tend to alienate them with a lot of the sort of cultural jargon that appeals to their highly educated base. The base of the Democrats now are people with high incomes and graduate degrees mostly, and they simply have lost the ability to talk to people who don't have those characteristics. And another thing also is I think the Democrats' extraordinary turn towards militarism and frankly warmongering has been deeply unpopular with the public. And it'll become more and more unpopular as the wars America has been participating in go worse and worse. I mean, and we have Gaza, and we've got the mass demonstrations against U.S. support for Israel. We have the fact that Muslim and Arab Americans are dramatically turning away from the Democrats, particularly in states like Michigan, which are critical. But in addition to that, I think there's a lot of evidence that Russia is now irretrievably winning the war in Ukraine. And it may be there's nothing the U.S. can do about that. And when that becomes evident that the war is lost in Ukraine, that's going to be very damaging to Biden's credibility. And so I think all of these things, what you're seeing here is the Democrats' sort of almost ignorance, really, of where voters are going, which is, as I said, the cultural issues the Democrats are emphasizing, I think, have gone a long way, especially on things like emphasizing pronouns and things like that, have gone a long way to alienating people. And, I just wonder if that's something that can be changed this late in the game. I don't think it can.
You think this is late in the game? We got 52 weeks.
Well, the Democrats are so wedded to kind of this cultural agenda and to kind of a vocabulary that appeals to people with very high levels of education and aren't really that worried about economics because they're doing very well economically. Frankly, people like me, all right, I'm a college professor. That's the kind of people that the Democrats are pitching towards and have been pitching towards for a while. And that's a cultural issue. That's something the Democrats are steeped in that kind of language. I don't see how they can really change that language and style in 52 weeks. No, I think that's more of a long-term problem for the Democrats. They really don't know how to appeal to people, for example, who are religiously oriented. They have no idea how to reach people like that. And so I think that contributes to it. There's also, as everybody said, the economy is not doing well, contrary to what Paul Krugman may say in the New York Times. Most people basically feel they are worse off than they were under Trump. And of course, that's going to be decisive in their vote. And again, it's very striking how this is, I've said this before, but it's not just working class whites. This is across the board in terms of racial groups. The 22% of blacks supporting Trump is historic. I don't think we've seen anything like that at the presidential level since probably before John F. Kennedy.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I mean, because Daddy King, Martin Luther King's father, who was one of the biggest preachers in the country, everyone talks about C.L. Franklin and Aretha Franklin. Well, there were a few C.L. Franklins, not many, but a few. And Martin Luther King's father, Daddy King, was one of those persons. He had one of the biggest black churches in the country and one of the most prominent black churches in the world. When he said, after much thought, I am moving my vote. I'm not going to vote Republican. These were Lincoln Republicans. For him to go and vote for John Kennedy was huge in 1960. It was huge. And then, Democrats locked black people in 64 after, voting rights and moving into the civil rights and fair housing and all of that. But it's not been that much of a long time. And when you look at Reverend Jackson in the 80s, the horse that we had to ride in on was the Democrats. I mean, you had Ronald Reagan, who opened his campaign, one of his opening campaign events, Robert Patillo and Dr. Gibbs and Dwight McKee, was in Philadelphia, Mississippi. They don't have a bus station. They don't have an airport. That's where they killed Goodman, Schwerner, and Cheney. I mean, it was a chill down your spine, Dr. Gibbs, when he opened his campaign there. When one of his big events, people were like, "Wait a minute!" And this guy could be the front runner. But we're watching this shift, and for David Axelrod to come out and say, only Joe Biden can make this decision. If he continues to run, he will be the nominee of the Democratic Party. What he needs to decide is whether that is wise, whether it's in his best interest or the country. Dr. Gibbs, what was David Axelrod trying to say? He telegraphed it on X, also known as Twitter.
There's no question what he was saying was that Joseph Biden should step down, acknowledge basically that he's not a credible candidate for the presidency, or at least a weak candidate, certainly, too weak really to run. He shouldn't run. That's what Axelrod is saying. And allow somebody else to step in. The problem, I think there's no question about it that Joseph Biden is a very weak candidate on all sorts of levels, including, of course, as everyone knows, his age and perceptions about his frailty. And the problem you have with what Axelrod is saying is there's no obvious replacement for him. Kamala Harris also is not very popular. She's the most obvious one, of course. She's the vice president. And it doesn't seem she's that much more effective at getting votes than Biden is. And she would not have the advantage of claiming to be an incumbent president, which Biden would have. Others are even weaker. Gavin Newsom of California has no incumbency whatsoever. He's from a state that people can point to isn't doing that well. If anybody traveled to San Francisco or Los Angeles recently, one can see the state of California is not in great shape, and that'll be used against him. And so I don't see Gavin Newsom as very effective. Pete Buttigieg has all sorts of baggage. I don't think, this Pritzker of Illinois, there's a, Chicago station. I don't think he really has much name recognition outside of Illinois. So I just don't see there's anybody really who can step up to the plate as an obvious heir apparent to Biden.
Well, they had some people, but they won't give Cornel West any space. He won't give Robert Kennedy any space.
Of course.
So you've got Robert Kennedy in the 20s. Polling there. Mm-hmm. You got Cornel West. If you give him more of the mic, he's going to get this black vote and the progressive white vote too. So, the Democrats, again, I saw them do it to Reverend in the 80s. The strongest candidates, Bernie, the strongest candidates, they kick out the party, and then they just say, you're going to vote for me because you have no choice. Are you joking me? People are not feeling that. I wasn't feeling it in the 80s, and I've not felt it since. I think they are absolutely foolish. And now look at what we've got. You got Trump on the fast track for the presidency, Dwight McKee.
Yes, ma'am.
Which is what you said, Robert Patillo. Your thoughts before we go to break? Unbelievable.
Well, I think the one thing that everyone is counting on in American politics on both sides of the aisle, the reason you haven't seen people like Tim Scott and Asa Hutchinson and Nikki Haley, etc., drop off on the Republican side of the aisle, the same reason you're not going to see President Biden drop off on the Democratic side of the aisle, which is everyone believes President Trump's going to be in prison. And that's going to be one thing. That is the only logical reason that Tim Scott is still running for president. Because they are of the belief that if President Trump is in prison, that opens up the door for whoever is in second place. So Nikki Haley will be able to have a claim, and Ron DeSantis will be able to have a claim, and others will be able to have a claim to say, well, look, I was second place. I came in second in Iowa. I came in second in New Hampshire. I came in second throughout the entire primary field. Like, yes, I came in second with 16% versus Trump's 60%, but yet still I came in second, and therefore, since he's going to be locked away in a jail cell for various felony convictions, I should be the new Republican nominee. And I think that's what they're depending on. That is, Ron DeSantis has started saying that a little bit louder. People like Chris Christie and Asa Hutchinson have said the same thing loudly, and it's starting to become more and more real to people. I think now that they're starting to see him in courtrooms, seeing his actual performance, seeing the performance of counsel in this civil case, they realize that if you bring this into a felony felony courtroom, you're going to go to prison. This clown show that you're riding around, well, this is not a legitimate legal strategy, and if you can't do this in the civil case, there's not really much opportunity for you in the felony cases you have around the country. And for someone like President Biden, as was said, there is no bench that you can just easily point to and say, well, this is the person next in line. There is no Barack Obama sitting in the end of the bench to come in and save the party. So President Biden and the Biden team very much can have the way of saying, well, look, I'm the incumbent. Look at the record. We're talking about $1.7 trillion in infrastructure, $1.5 trillion for the Inflation Reduction Act, 11 consecutive months of inflation reduction, 3.4% unemployment, 3.2% inflationary numbers. We stabilized the housing market. We stopped de-dollarization. We stopped the run on the bank. We started having bank failures. That's what they're going to argue.
Why aren't they on your show talking about that, Robert?
Because they don't want to win. That's why. Okay. That's the problem. They have no interest in winning.
See, I see that a little differently, Santita.
Okay, 1 minute.
I think that they're setting up, most of the Republicans setting up trying to be on the ticket or in the cabinet. I think they see Trump as a shoo-in, that he's going to win, and they want to be somewhere in that number listening for their name. And so if you look at the way they treat him and cater to him, none of them act as if he's going to jail. They all act as if he's going to be the president. All of them, other than Christie, are afraid to confront him. And Christie got booed the other day at a rally. And so I think they see him as almost a shoo-in, and they'll position themselves. So when the names are called, their names will be in the hat somewhere.
Call us at 773-763-9278. We are 1 year to the week away from from all these campaigns. Congress, both houses, they're up. The state houses are up. The governorships are up. Election time, the season is here. But everyone now, people are worried about they're wondering if former President Trump is going to go to jail, but he could still win from prison, everybody. So what does this mean? And why is this? Something's not happening. And Dwight McKee and Robert Patillo and Dr. Gibbs, you need to explain this, because the more his legal troubles mount, the more popular President Trump becomes. Tune in on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel, everybody. I want you to call me at 773-763-9278. Let's talk about this. And what can the Democrats do to turn this around? Are you even feeling it? Because the black vote is moving away from the Democratic Party. The Hispanic vote is moving away from the Democratic Party. These young people are moving away from the Democratic Party. Something is going on, and I want to hear from you what you think it is. Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show in just a minute. So you think, Dwight, that these candidates have made the calculation that Trump is going to be the nominee. I want to be VP or Secretary of State, or you think that's what they're jockeying for right now?
I think that's exactly what they're jockeying for. They know they have no chance to win to be the nominee at all. None. I mean, he's beating them by more than he's beating Biden. And so I think they're just trying to position themselves, particularly guys like Scott, to be somewhere on the ticket. I think they're looking at a Carson strategy to say, maybe if I just, if I don't make too much noise, don't say any bad things about him, show myself to be productive, they'll find me when the time comes to put me either on the ticket or in the cabinet, or they will support my next campaign.
Who do you think would be or name one or two people, and I want this for you, Dr. Gibbs, and Robert Patillo. Who in that field do you think would be that would be a masterstroke if you put them on the ticket? Dwight?
It's this young black Republican guy. I think he's out of Florida. Probably would know his name. He's a brand new guy, kind of just beginning to. Yeah, I don't think he has the kind of track record that alienates him. I think he's a good balance to
sending Reverend Yuri and Attorney Sinat through.
He's a very articulate guy, good-looking guy. I think he would be a plus. Nikki Haley, I don't think that Trump trusts that much because she has shown herself to be inconsistent. I think that Scott overdoes it. I think that he's unnecessary Tom. I think that he toms to the point it becomes counterproductive over time. And so I think they look at him and say, please, Rod, come on. Like, even we know better than that. And so I think it's, I think the young black guy has all the credentials. I'll be curious to know what Robert thinks.
And Dr. Gibbs. Robert, very quickly.
Well, I'm not just going to gloss over unnecessary Tom. I got to put that on a T-shirt or something. You were being an unnecessary Tom. You're taking it too far. You got to put the banjo away. You're doing too much. Yeah, I'm using
that banjo alone. Yeah. Beautiful instrument.
Like you ain't got to play the banjo and play the horn at the same time. Dang, this is unnecessary Tom.
Don't forget the cymbals on your feet. Okay.
But I think Trump has made it very clear that he is not going to pick any of those politicians to be his vice president. He literally tweeted out during one of the debates that he didn't see anybody who was vice president material on that stage. I think President Trump is going to double down the entertainment aspect of things. I think this is part of what people are missing, that it's difficult to go from a reality TV star being the president of the United States, particularly for this generation that has grown up with reality television. So if you're 40 years old, Survivor came on in 1996. Half your life has been reality television. It's hard to go from that to just a old white man doing old white man stuff like President Biden. And so I think President Trump's going to double down. I could see him picking someone like Tucker Carlson to be his vice president. I could see him picking someone like a Marjorie Taylor Greene or a Kristi Noem out of North Dakota, because I think he's more interested in the optics and interested in who can play well in media, who can carry the Trump message, more so than anybody who's qualified in politics. They're of the opinion that anybody can do politics. Just get in there, you outsource it to the experts. It's more about who plays well in TV. He sees this as being a television show. Even think about his lawyers during his trial. He doesn't pick competent lawyers. He picks the pretty lady or the guy who looks like a lawyer from the 1950s. He wants people who look the part more so than people who are capable.
Dr. Gibbs?
Well, I suppose somebody I was thinking that he might consider. Again, this is just purely practical. I'm not saying I like her, because at this point I don't. Tulsi Gabbard will be very effective.
I think so.
I think honestly, she used to be very consistently anti-war, but you have this sort of strident defense of the Israeli position, which is completely inconsistent with what she's been saying all along.
Wait a minute, down through the years. I'm like, are you serious?
Well, that's true. I agree. She's always been very pro-Israeli, also with a certain animus towards Muslims that, again, I don't understand. But nevertheless, so I'm not defending her. I think, though, I thought she was more interesting when she seemed much more consistently anti-war and sort of anti-military industrial complex, talking about the war machine. All the same, despite what I just said, I think she'd be an effective vice president. She comes across very well on TV. She's very articulate. She looks good on TV. She has a military record. She's a former Democrat until very recently. Somebody who, in fact, was the first major figure in Congress to endorse Bernie Sanders in 2016. So she's across the board ideologically. It's kind of hard to pin down ideologically in terms of a consistent ideological message, which you could say is a good thing. Especially, I think a lot of the country now is mixed up ideologically.
60 seconds, everybody.
I think so. I think that she would be a very effective vice presidential choice. and somebody, I suspect he's going to look very carefully at her. At least that's my guess.
Well, she has been a straight shooter, so we will see. Attorney Sanat.
Hi, good morning, everyone.
Hello,
How are
sir.
you?
You were great yesterday.
Thank you. I was a little nervous.
Oh, please, no, you weren't nervous. Yeah, get out of here. When I heard you, I was like, oh, wait a minute. I knew it was a soror, but I said, wait a minute, Anastasia, what?
Yes, I was excited to be there. Thank you for the invitation to be present.
Oh man! Next time, just send me, like, let me know, because I
10
couldn't
seconds.
see you from the stage.
Yeah, sure.
Because the light was in
Right,
my eyes, and I
was
can't
like,
see.
ooh, is she going to invite me to the stage? Because them stairs are scary.
Stand by.
Change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey everybody, we're having a great conversation here on the Santita Jackson Show, WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. My YouTube channel, the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. Meet Robert and Linear Bob and Barbara and Lorraine and Mark and everybody over here. We are having a good time today talking with Dwight McKee, Dr. David Gibbs, brilliant historian at the University of Arizona, Robert Patillo, brilliant talk show host, part of the national leadership team at Rainbow Push. Of course, he's on WAOK every Sunday from 1 to 4 Eastern Standard Time. Reverend Dr. Todd Yeary, also from the national leadership team of Rainbow Push, and the senior pastor of the iconic Douglas Memorial Community Church, and brilliant lawyer, former president of the Haitian American Lawyers Association of Illinois, attorney Anastasia Sanat, who helped to light up Congressman Jonathan Jackson's migrant crisis town hall meeting. We had a great time yesterday, attorney Sanat, and we'll be talking about that too, because we're looking for people who speak Spanish, and we should, to help our Spanish-speaking brothers and sisters. Indeed, 2/3 of the hemisphere, North and South and Central America, that is the predominant language here. But so is French, Creole. We are not looking for people who speak that language, and we need to do, or those languages, and we need to do that. So everybody, we're going to be talking about that more as time goes forward. But I want to talk with you about these slipping poll numbers of President Biden's. We're a year out, literally 52 weeks from the presidential election, from the Congress being up for grabs, from both houses, from state legislatures being up for grabs, gubernatorial races, they're up for grabs. I mean, and your local races, your county races. Everybody, please get registered to vote, and let us make a special appeal to our young people. And our young people can participate in many primaries across the country, even if they're not 18 by next spring. If they're going to be 18 by November, they can participate, depending upon where you are. They can participate. They can vote in these elections if they're going to be 18 by November, the first week of November, by election day of 2024. So you need to check with your board of elections so you can make sure that the young people are voting. They need to be voting. Reverend Jackson has been pushing for that for more than 50 years, that when you graduate from high school, you need to have your diploma in one hand and a voter registration card in the other, because you need to have a citizenship. You need to graduate into that as well. So let's get into some of these headlines so we can get to the rest of the show as we talk about Biden's falling polling numbers. What can we do? Reverend Dr. Yeary, an attorney at Senate, and Dr. Gibbs and Dwight McKee and Attorney Patillo. What can we do? What should be done? Black people are moving toward Trump. Hispanics are moving toward Trump. Young people are moving into the independent column, and other people are too. So Democrats, by not making room for Robert Kennedy and Cornel West, what have you done? Think about that. 773-763-9278, 773-763-9278, in 5 swing states, battleground states. Trump is besting Biden by big numbers. even as he has these difficult legal hurdles before him. He will testify. Former President Trump will testify in his civil fraud trial in New York today. $250 million in fines is on the line, everybody. What's going to happen? We'll talk about that tomorrow on the Santita Jackson Show. Palestinian officials say nearly 10,000 people have been killed in Gaza. Israel cut communications in the besieged territory of Gaza during what it called a significant attack in its war with Hamas. Israeli forces have encircled Gaza City. The U.S. Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, has traveled to the West Bank and to Baghdad in an effort to contain the conflict. 40% of the nearly 10,000 who've been killed are elderly people, they're women, they're children. At least 157 people were killed in an earthquake in Nepal, praying for our brothers and sisters over there. A vegetable oil found in some citrus sodas may be banned, everybody. Brominated vegetable oil has been found to have had toxic effects on animals. Check what you're drinking, everybody. Please check what you're drinking. More than 300,000 people turned out in Washington, D.C. in a pro-Palestinian march, according to Park Service estimates, as well as Al Jazeera reporting. And in London and in New York City, similar numbers, if not larger numbers, turned out supporting the Palestinians as well. And so I want you to call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-9278, as the UN ambassador from Israel to the United Nations is denying a humanitarian crisis in Gaza. What do you think about that, everybody? And the U.S. Appeals Court has upheld the assault weapons ban here in the great state of Illinois. That is good stuff. In Chicago, we're going to have a high, everybody, of 65 degrees. Can you believe it? What is going on with this weather, everybody? It is absolutely crazy. It's going to be cloudy, though. It's already cloudy. In Minneapolis, St. Paul, you're going to be seeing snow showers. Your high is 52 degrees. The temperatures are falling, though. In the NFL, the Vikings 31, the Falcons 28. The Saints 24, the Bears, come on Bears, 17. In the NBA, the Jazz will be playing the Bulls and the Celtics will be facing off against the Timberwolves. And those are some of the headlines on the Santita Jackson Show. Let's get right to it, everybody. Joining Dwight McKee and Robert Patillo and Dr. David Gibbs are Reverend Dr. Todd Geary and Attorney Anastasia Sanat. Attorney Anastasia Sanat, first of all, what do you think about these poll numbers? What's driving down Biden's numbers in your estimation?
I think the basic thing that's driving down, first of all, good morning. Thank you for having me. Second of all, the thing that I think is driving Biden's numbers down is his foreign policy stance. I think that a lot of people are not happy with the war that's going on between Israel and Hamas. And I think that they realize now, based on social media, that the Palestinian people are being adversely impacted by this war. And so his support of Israel has definitely impacted whether or not people support him, because they don't necessarily feel that his foreign policy has been strong enough. And what they want is for him to encourage a ceasefire as opposed to encourage $60 billion in aid going to Israel, and also aiding the continuation of airstrikes and drones and things like that, killing innocent lives and children. So I think that's the one thing that's driving his numbers down. Obviously, he can never let go of Kamala Harris, because Black women, quite frankly, the cornerstone of the voting bloc that he needs, as well as, the diversification of the Black voters, he can never let that go. So in essence, if he does not increase his popularity by making better foreign policy decisions, his numbers are going to continue to go down.
But keeping her on, well, is that a good thing? I mean, because she's not very popular. And will Black women be blamed if he continues to hold on?
I think keeping her on is important, because I think when Trump is looking at his presidential vice president nominees, I think one of the ones that he was looking at, which would probably be the strongest, is Nikki Haley. I know she's the only one that left his administration that didn't have any controversy, that she was the United Nations ambassador. She also, obviously, like Kamala, she's of Indian descent. So when you're thinking about what are the strongest polls to that, I think Trump is looking at trying to select a woman. I mean, Tim Scott, he's African American, he's Republican, he's out of South Carolina, and I think he's in the running, but I don't think he's high up on the polls. I think if you're going to think of who's the highest up on the polls, obviously you've got DeSantis, and then you've got Nikki Haley. Ramswawi, the tech entrepreneur, I don't think he has the sway that Nikki Haley has. But ultimately, if you're going to do, 2 for 2 and run for 1, Nikki Haley would probably be the only one that can really go against Kamala Harris. And so I think that's why Biden knows he can't let her go off the ticket. He needs her on the ticket, or he's definitely doomed.
Reverend Dr. Erie, your thoughts about these numbers? These are in key swing states. Arab Americans, he's losing their support. He's hemorrhaging that support. He's got to have them if he wants to win Michigan, for example, and Pennsylvania and other places. What's going on? What do you see?
Well, good morning, Santita, and to I see a few things. One, we've talked about this several times. There's just bad messaging about the president's policies, and then there's bad policies. And when you add those two things together, it becomes particularly toxic. And while that's intriguing for what the outcomes will be for the Oval Office, it also has implications for who's going to control the House and the Senate. So the issue is really, is he translating what's going on in terms of his policy impact where it resonates with the people? That's always been a horrific exercise for this administration from the time they first showed up in D.C. It's been a hot mess from the very beginning, because when we talk about all of those kind of progressive issues, policy issues, even when they were talking about the American Rescue Plan and then the infrastructure bill, that's been, nobody even remembers those things anymore. There's no conversation about what kind of relevance that has to changing the dynamic and the pain of more pressure on the pocketbook, no real addressing of the issues that resonate. We don't hear anything about police reform. We don't hear anything about protecting voting rights. Now we've got the whole international affairs portfolio, which includes not only immigration, but also these two wars that, for whatever reason, they seem to be able to churn out money, but they can't seem to get funding to the cities where the pain is. I think it is creating this crisis of everybody looking at how is this affecting me? And so when folks are now looking at their local concerns, this administration seems to be so disconnected from it. And the president can't seem to find his footing when it comes to what is your position. And what adds to the complexity is that last week when, members of the Obama campaign came to celebrate the 15-year anniversary of his election to the presidency, as it relates to the issue in Gaza, President Obama, I think, put President Biden in a quandary that President Biden has leaned so far to protecting Israel's right to defend itself, that President Obama said there's blood on both sides, right? There's blood on the hands of both parties. And so I think there's kind of this infighting inside the Democratic Party where the different sectors, if you will, the different planks of the party are really kind of working through the messiness of trying to do policy, and the president's voice is basically muted. And so it really doesn't matter, where folks are going to gravitate to the one that's most obviously the alternative, and that continues to be Donald Trump on the other side. And even as folks will relive what happened, during his 4 years, and they'll say, whatever their opinion is, for some folks, they've been like, all right, well, we lived through that and we survived it. Is it reasonable for us to go back and reconsider that? Because what we've got right now doesn't seem to be much better, if not even worse. And I think that's the kind of resonance that we're hearing from regular, everyday folks who aren't going to get down in the weeds about all of the complexities about how you make policy. They just going to say, this is some bullshiggity. I got close. You
got real close. You made me jump. I'm like, oh my word. Am I going to get a call from Matt Cummings today? I don't know.
No calls today. I figured I'd make sure I'm going to get right to the line, but I'm not going to cross it.
Oh, my heart was in my chest. Robert Patillo, you lay out, as you just heard from Reverend Dr. Yuri, you lay out these cases so brilliantly. I know that Attorney Sinatra can lay out the case brilliantly. I know it. I know Dr. Gibbs can. I know Dwight can. You can't get these people, you can't get the Biden people on your show, on these shows. You can't get them to lay that case out. I mean, in less than a minute, you laid out the accomplishments of the administration. And yet, when their messengers get on television and get on the radio, they don't do that. What's going on, Robert? They don't do it.
It's a lack of leadership at the top. It's a lack of very direct and clear messaging. And when you come out, the one thing that people can learn from Trump is it doesn't matter what you say or do, as long as you say or do it confidently, people will get behind you. Trump said from the beginning, the election was stolen. I didn't really lose. There are millions of people that still believe that, despite every piece of evidence known to man. When your lawyers are taking plea deals and they're in court crying, saying, "I'm sorry, I lied to you," and you still have millions of people saying, "Nope, they just don't understand either." That's what happens when you're confident in your messaging. People will get behind it. President Biden's team has not learned that. And additionally, I think that President Biden's team does not understand the pop culture and social media world the way that the Trump team did. The Trump team knew that just like any other reality show, you had to make sure that you were keeping the audience engaged at all times. Remember that time the Scaramucci just showed up and was there for 2 weeks and then just disappeared? And that was just a thing that happened, and we all just accepted it, and it was just gone. Remember that time Omarosa got drug out the White House and tried to climb through a window to get back in? I mean, every week there was a new mid-season twist and turn, and it's difficult going from that to just kind of an old man at the beach making sure the economy doesn't collapse. And until you can get past that perception issue, and that can be done legislatively, that can be done by having a competent campaign, but they haven't shown any appetite or ability to move past that perception issue. And that's why President Trump, for all his craziness, people still, for some reason, think that he's more mentally attuned and physically fit and able to carry out the duties of the office than President Biden, despite them being about the same age and both having the same number of kind of crazy gaffes when it comes to speech and mistakes they make. President Trump is seen as being stronger because he does it more confidently and understands media better.
Well, I mean, Dr. Gibbs, there's a headline from the New York Times that says why Biden is behind and how he could come back. Do you see him? Well, nothing's impossible, but do you think he can come back, or would he have to? What could he do to come back?
Well, in the unlikely event that you get a sudden upturn in the economy and there's a significant improvement in real economic conditions that individual people can feel in their own lives, short of that, I don't see very much. I mean, now, I think it's very unlikely you get that sudden upturn. In fact, I think with the international crises going on, the likelihood of a sudden downturn is much greater. But one never knows. And so if the economy significantly improves over the next 12 months, I think that's the main thing that could help Biden. Short of that, which is possible but unlikely, that's how I'd put it. Short of that, I just don't see very much on the horizon. For the Democrats, one thing that I find very striking about the Democrats, a very dysfunctional feature, is they really seem unable to learn from their mistakes. Since the advent of Trump in 2015, the Democrats' only strategy against him really is to attack him personally. And it has been demonstrated again and again that just isn't very effective. And the attacks are mostly very off base. And if anything, they help Trump. They make him look like a martyr. And that's still their line of attack, basically, is to attack Trump personally, to try and put him in jail. They tried impeachment twice, and it didn't, it's not that effective. The Democrats do have to come up with their own problems. They have to basically self-analyze why they are so unable to reach a working class base that used to be the Democrats' base for decades after Franklin Delano Roosevelt. They have to ask themselves why they lost that working class base. And again, as I've said before, it's not just working class whites anymore. And so the question is, what are they doing wrong? And that requires self-examination. and self-criticism, and yes, a willingness to engage these sort of divisive cultural issues that they sort of have completely adopted, and this sort of very upscale vocabulary, and the Democrats simply are unwilling to do that. And so I just don't see that changing significantly in the next 12 months. I see them just doing the same thing they've done before, which is basically saying Trump is vulgar, he's this, he's that. It's all true. Let me say I don't like Trump. I think that's all true, but it's not. People already know that, and people who vote for him know he's vulgar. They know he's at a certain level really kind of corrupt, but they vote for him anyway. And so I don't think they need to be reminded of those facts. And yeah, I think Dwight McGee said earlier that by trying to put him in jail and constantly indicting him and everything under the sun, it just makes him a martyr. And his base basically is not influenced by that one iota. So I just don't see this. The Democrats seem to be mired in a kind of culture of strategy that is ineffectual. So I just don't. I wouldn't have very high hopes for the Democrats turning this around in any basic way in the next 12 months.
Call us at 773-763-9278. Anastasia, I got 1 minute before we go to break. No,
I just
actually,
thought it was
1.5,
interesting
90 seconds.
Okay, I thought it was interesting that he mentioned that they think that he's a martyr, because when he was running against Hillary Clinton, what he did is he used all of her pending litigation against her in order to say, why would you want someone in office that has all of these pending litigation? In this particular situation, you have a ruling out of New York in which he's committed fraud. You have the pending investigation in Florida. You have another investigation with the January 6th events and out of D.C. You have other events coming from Georgia in which, as Attorney Patilla had mentioned, it's our attorneys that say, yep, we did wrong, but there are still people that are trying to vote for him. And it's kind of crazy to think that the American people, quite frankly, are what Hillary Clinton said. They're so silly in their thinking that they still want to elect him, but they were unwilling to elect her. And she obviously was cleared of all of these things, but he has not been cleared. So he's got 4 different types of litigation that's going on. And I don't understand how it is that they can see him as a martyr. They really just see him as corrupt. But I think that's the soul of America at this point. I think the real reason why they are voting for him is because the voters that are voting for him and supporting him, they're just corrupt themselves. And so they want to see a corrupt government take place again. And I think that's what's happening in our society at this point. And I agree that he has lost, Biden, has lost his perspective when it comes to social media. He really doesn't get the younger people, the millennials, the Gen Zs, the Gen Ys. He really doesn't get them, and he needs to take more of an active role in focusing his messaging towards those groups, because those are the groups that are voting. And so if he can change the conversation from his bad policy decisions when it comes to Israel and Hamas, and his bad policy decisions when it comes to giving aid to the Ukraine-Russia war, then maybe he might have an opportunity at gaining some additional votes. But I really do believe that a lot of those younger voters, they're not going to vote for Trump, but they're not going to vote for Biden. What they're going to do is do an independent candidate. And I think that will hurt them.
Or the independent candidate is, you don't count anything out. They just might win. See, you're not old enough to remember John Anderson. And if he could have presented a serious challenge, because now more and more Americans vote independently, and they think independently. They don't want to be affiliated with the Democrats or the Republicans. So, we're watching the dynamic shift. Hey, 300,000 people marched in Washington, D.C. in support of Palestinians. 20 years ago, that never would have happened, ever. Things are shifting, everybody. Call us at 773-763 WCPT, 773-763-9278. Dwight, I want you to speak to this when we get back. Turning a monster into a martyr, that has happened. That has happened, it appears. Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show in just a minute. You all keep talking during the break.
That's very interesting about the martyr part, because I don't see Trump as a martyr at all. But I do believe that there are enough voters that see him as that way, and it's kind of just sad. It's really sad.
Well, I don't think that, Dwight, you weren't saying that you saw him as a martyr. You were saying that he is being positioned as such, yes?
Yeah, and he's positioned himself as such, which is very, very prudent on his side. Is that you have to understand how people think. And when they see an obvious attempt to neutralize him as a candidate, they're not seeing whatever corruption is surrounding him. They see that they want to decide for themselves if they want to vote for him. They don't want the state. They don't want Biden to make the decision they never have. And so not only do they see him as a martyr, they see themselves as martyrs because they see their vote being sacrificed based on the political ambitions of other people who they don't agree with. And so, yeah, it's worked to his advantage and will continue to work to his advantage. That the more they indict him, particularly when he walks away from some of these cases, the stronger he looks, the more he looks like the antithesis of a corrupt system, the more he looks like the vanguard of democracy. And that's how this thing is playing out, in my opinion.
And what's amazing to me is you have the Trump organization, or you had the Trump Foundation lawsuit from Letitia James, where they were ordered to pay $2.5 million and dissolve the Trump Foundation because they were lying about their charity. Then you have the Trump University lawsuit, where they were forced to pay $25 million for defrauding all those students out of all that money for those fake degrees. Then you had the E. Eugene Carroll lawsuit, where he was forced to pay her $5 million, and the judge found that he was civilly liable not for the assault, but for the rape of E. Eugene Carroll. That is in the order that Donald Trump raped that woman, and that we got almost no headlines. Now you have the Trump organization lawsuit currently going on where he's already been found guilty of fraud. This entire thing we're doing now is all about damages. He's already guilty of fraud. And it has mattered not in the slightest. I mean, in what other world can somebody be found liable for raping a woman and it not impact your poll numbers in the slightest, including with women in your base? So when he said that he could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue, at this point, I'm not sure he wanted to get out there and do it just to see what would happen, because he's shown to be almost having a cult-like effect with his followers, and President Biden has not been able to replicate that on his side of the aisle.
Dr. Gibbs?
60 seconds, everybody.
Hold that thought. I'm going to bring some of this onto the air. This is just stand by. We're coming up in 30.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
Ten seconds, everyone.
Oh, I was going to say, I was like, why is it so silent?
No, honey. I do more than one thing. I'm trying to stay on the air.
Okay.
Stand by.
Change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
It's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show, WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 radio. The voice of progressive Minnesota, the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel, everybody. Please get on over there. Hey, we're not advocating for Trump here. We're trying to drill down and find out what this New York Times poll means. David Axelrod, no less, a huge political operative in the Democratic space, called upon Joe Biden to leave the race. The problem is you ain't got no bench. Yeah, I said it. You've driven Robert Kennedy out of the party. Whatever you thought he was in the Democratic lane, Dr. West could have been in the Democratic lane. There's no space. So you ain't got no bench. Two of the most exciting candidates you have banished from the party. And you think people are just going to vote for you? Not going to happen. It's not happening now. That's what the numbers are telling you. And I heard some pundits on television last night and this morning saying, well, I can't see black people voting for Trump. Oh, darling, it already happened. And the numbers have grown. The question is why? Hispanics already voted for Donald Trump. That has happened. That ship has sailed, and their numbers have grown. Young people are leaving the Democratic Party. What is going on here? And now you had 300,000 people marching in Washington, D.C., Dr. Gibbs, in support of Palestinians. You know that's a sea shift in American thinking. It's a huge 300,000. There are 500,000 people in D.C., 600,000. I mean, they almost eclipsed the population of the place. That place was packed. You couldn't. They used to call when they were. I was talking with Jim Zogby. I had him on Reverend Jackson's show, and of course, I've known James Zogby from the Arab American Institute, a huge figure, iconic figure in the human rights and Palestinian rights space. Because he was the deputy campaign manager in the 84 and 88 Jackson campaigns, he and Dr. Ron Walters were among the few who would go and negotiate with the DNC about the rules changes and about what to put in the platform. And particularly in 1988, when Reverend Jackson was the highest second place finisher in the history of American presidential primary politics. So we had a lot of leverage and used it to empower our people and the people more than that. You know what they call Palestinians? The P word. Dr. Gibbs, Dwight McKee, Robert Patillo, Dr. Yuri, Anastasia Sinat. You couldn't even call their names. Now, Reverend had them in the platform, so we call their names. Something has shifted out here, and I'm wondering if the Democrats get it, because you're right, they're coming across Dr. Gibbs as the party of the elites, of the Ivy League, the leisure class. I'm like, what are you doing? Not the working class, Dr. Gibbs.
Well, that's a basic problem. I mean, there's a French economist, Thomas Piketty, who's been telling what he calls a Brahmin left, an upper crust left. In Europe as well as in the United States, you've had a shift in the. I think by left, I think he means both the establishment left, the Democratic Party, and also the activist left. You have seen it really adopt a kind of. You can look at their vocabulary, the kind of vocabulary used by the Democrats and by the activist left. It is disturbingly upper crust and kind of jargony, and it reflects who they're really pitching to. And I think that's one of the base problems here. And it's one the Democrats simply don't want to face or even discuss. And that's very unhealthy. They paid a price in terms of what happened in 2016, and they may very well may pay a price again in terms of the reelection of Trump, which may very well happen. And I think one of the things the Democrats don't have, liberals don't have, the activist left doesn't have, and that's honestly where I would position myself just personally, they don't have empathy, not only in a moral sense in terms of trying to feel what other people feel, but also a strategic sense. If you want to win, you have to know what other people are thinking and take it seriously. And I think among liberals, the attitude is that if you try and empathize with the Trump voters and try and get into their head and think, assess what they're thinking about and why they're thinking it, it's almost an act of treason. If you analyze why people voted for Trump and give reasons why they did it, people will say, oh, you're supporting Trump, which isn't true. You're just analyzing it. But I think that's where we are right now. People are so partisan and so touchy about it, they can't think straight. And so what you're getting is very ineffective strategies. I mean, people tend to forget that the way the Trump voter looks at all these indictments is motive. The motive is not to do justice from their standpoint. The motive is to see to it that Trump can't run for president, to take him off the ballot, to make sure that the half the population that wants to vote for Trump will not be allowed to vote for Trump, even if they want to. And also as revenge for having won the 2016 election. Now, let me say personally, I think Trump is deeply corrupt. And in principle, I would have no problem putting him in prison. But the issue of motive does come into play here. And almost certainly the principal motive in indicting him, I think this is transparent. Principal motive is political. And that, it must be said, is a bad motive when somebody's running for president. And that, I think, is how the Trump voter sees it. And so I think these indictments are simply not hurting him one iota. If anything, they're generating support for him. I agree with Dwight McGee on this. And so I think this is emblematic of just the Democrats not being able to think straight. They hate Trump so much. They have so much Trump derangement syndrome. They can't think of how effectively to combat him. And they may lose the election on that account.
That is unbelievable. Unbelievable. But Dwight, you've been saying that this could actually happen, that by really pursuing this prosecution, it's not that you don't want to root out corruption, but my thing is, if you're going to root out corruption, you need to root it out everywhere, and we're selective in that. And that for me is problematic, and it's hypocritical.
Well, I wanted to speak to the other question. I think that Biden could still win if a couple of things happen. One, if the Russians surrender. Second, if the Chinese forgive us of all our debt. Thirdly, if the Saudis give us free oil. Fourthly, if Hamas gives all the hostages back. And fifth, if blacks tell him that reparations is not that important to us. I think if all those things line up, he has a chance to win. But if they don't line up, I think it's Trump to the White House.
Unbelievable. I mean, what say you, Anastasia? I mean, do you?
I was just thinking about actually the actual qualifications for president. And I think a lot of people think that there's more than there really is. I mean, if you look at Article 2, Section 1, Clause 5, it basically says that the president is only required to be a natural born citizen, has to be at least 35 years of age, and has to be a resident of the United States for 14 years. These are the basic qualifications for president. The problem with the United States is that we have changed our qualifications internally and morally as to what we think the president should be. And Trump knows this, and he has played upon the understanding, right, of the social give and take, I should say, of a voter. And so some people think that, well, he's a billionaire, but he lied. You know what I'm saying? He was already convicted of lying about that. You know what I'm saying? And so he's not able to practice business in New York any longer. What's going to happen with the January 6th in Washington, D.C.? What's going to happen in Georgia? What's going to happen in Florida? Those are all up in the air. But at the end of the day, we've had a previous president that was elected president while he was sitting in jail. So there are people that are that corrupt that are willing to still vote for him despite his current situation. What we need to think about when it comes to whether or not Biden has the strength to overcome some of these additional qualifications is what I like to refer to them as. These additional qualifications is really him focusing on making the right decision on the moral ground of what the people are thinking about. Because I watched a lot of Sean King's posts in Instagram and Facebook about the Palestinian people and how so many have been impacted by this. And it's as if people don't really understand that there were 2,000 Hamas members that were engaged in this activity. And now there are over 10,000 people who are dead that are Palestinian, not necessarily Hamas members. There's no strategy, no military strategy that has been used in order to root out and find these radical.
Let me just hold on, because at the beginning of this conflict, the IDF said, we are not looking for accuracy, we're looking for damage. That's the strategy. Anytime you strike a refugee camp, when you know the tunnels underneath and you are one of the most powerful military forces on earth, and you mean to tell me you can't target a strike? You can't get up under those tunnels? You have to kill hundreds of people? You got to kill 10,000, almost 10,000 people. Are you serious? What is that?
Right, and that's what makes Biden look bad. because the continuing support of a government, a Jewish state, which really isn't, a lot of Jewish members are opposing what this government of Israel is doing. It's just terrible. I mean, it's just terrible. And I think that if they're really truly interested in eradicating what they've considered a terrorist organization, Hamas, which has been on our list, the United States list, since 1997, then they really should be doing better strategy than what you have just identified, which is just total destruction. Because in essence, what the American people are now learning through social media, not through the media, but through social media, is that it's genocide. This is like going back to Rwanda. You've got black people fighting each other, the Hutus and the Tutsis fighting each other because one has a thinner nose than the other. I mean, these are the things that are so simple and yet so complex at the same time. And I think if Biden is truly going to reverse the polarity of what's going on with him now, he's going to have to really focus on foreign policy and in taking on a position that's obviously different than what happened in 1947, because that plan that they created in 1947 was obviously a racist plan. And we are not.
But everybody has said it for years. No one would listen. But they automatically conflated loving critique of Israel with anti-Semitism. It worked for a long time. It's not working now. And now you have the American public who have shifted to join the rest of the 96% of the world. We're only 4.5%.
I mean, and none of the government leaders are the ones that are on the ground. I mean, in Ukraine, at least you have the president on the ground. But in this particular situation, none of the government leaders are on the ground. These are people that are being forced to do whatever it is that they do and getting away with whatever it is they do morally. And so when you think about what is it that we really need to do, we really just need to take a different position from 1947. I mean, Israel wasn't even created until 1948. Now all these people think, oh, Israel's been around forever and centuries. No, it really hasn't. It just came about in 1948. So people really need to consider, what's really going on. The position of 1947 should not be the position of 2023.
Well, look, I don't deny that Israel has the right to exist at all. And I affirm that. That having been said, you have to coexist with your neighbors. Okay? We can't be at war.
Yeah, but it doesn't make anti-Semitic if you oppose the Israeli government. If you think the government's doing wrong, that doesn't mean you're anti-Semitic.
But
it just means you oppose what the government leaders are making decisions
but
on.
that has been the rap that people have gotten up until recently. Let me go to Anita very quickly. Anita, what's on your mind, sweetie? Okay, well, let me go to Paul from Seattle. Paul?
Good morning, Santita. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning,
the Republicans have convinced the working class to, rather than vote their pocketbook, to vote their grievances, and convince them that their pocketbook woes are based in their grievances. And since when they vote for Republicans, their pocketbooks never get any better, that's what convinces working class people to double down on their grievances, which are gender, race, ethnicity. These are all the kinds of grievances that the Republicans are pushing and convincing the working class that, oh no, the reason that you aren't getting anywhere isn't because of our policies that will do nothing for you. It's because of your biases and grievances, social and cultural grievances. I don't know how to approach somebody like that. Obviously, it's not getting any better. I once tried, you talked about third candidate people. And by the way, Santita, I do remember John Anderson. I voted for him.
Mm-hmm. I couldn't vote
you were just a little bit shy of being able to do that, I think, by about a year.
Mm-hmm.
But I voted for John Anderson, and here's what I remember thinking. I thought, no, he's not going to win. But if he gets at least 5% of the vote, he can get federal funding, and he can run in 84, and then he'll win.
Mm-hmm.
And then I realized, oh, yeah, he got 6% of the vote. Hooray, he can run in 84. And then I realized Jimmy Carter lost by 6%, and I felt like the dumb donkey standing there holding the bag, because I just helped put Ronald Reagan in office, who was the beginning of the end of the middle class. And
did you really think about all the people who were unregistered? Think about all the people who did not vote. I just think that those who vote and who exercise their right to vote for whom they choose take too much of a hit. You know,
the first election I could vote in was in 1978. I turned 18 in 1977, and I've never missed an election ever. I say that with great pride, and I don't know after you vote the way you feel, why anybody would not take that opportunity to feel that good about at least having. The problem is when people say, "Oh, my vote doesn't count." No, those are people who what they want is they want their vote to be the only vote that counts.
And that's what I say
problem.
when you're told not to vote for so-called third-party candidates. Look, I remember in 1988, among the biggest supporters Reverend and Mrs. Jackson had were Dr. Camille and Dr. Bill Cosby on a personal and institutional level. I mean, they were all in. You hear me? And so on the set of The Cosby Show, which is still the most popular sitcom in the history of American television, Bill Cosby did something that was huge. Dwight McKee, Reverend Dr. Tajiri, Dr. Gibbs, Anastasia Sinat. On the set of the most popular show in America, there was not a week that it was not number one for 5 or 6 years. Nothing like that has ever happened before, ever, and not since. He sat in the chair in the living room of The Cosby Show and said, "Vote your hopes and not your fears." For one of the few times in your life you have an opportunity to vote for someone who you really, really want, everybody. Vote for Jesse Jackson. Vote for him. You know you want him. Oh, this is what the man said in the commercial. He said, "You know you want him." And they ran this commercial all over the country. He said, "Vote for him. Vote for him." And I'm just saying, I think that people are taking too much of a hit if they want to vote for Cornel West. They're taking a hit if they want to vote for Robert Kennedy. And I don't think that's right. Instead of asking Biden to take some of what they have and move. You can't just send Anthony Blinken over to meet with President Abbas and say, "I'm trying to ask them to minimize casualties." There are 10,000 Palestinians who are dead. Are you serious? Collective punishment is a war crime. Stay right there, Paul. Paul, stay right there because I want to get some closing thoughts from the panel. No, stay right there, sweetie, because I appreciate your calling in this early. So stay right there because I want you to interact. Dr. Gibbs, we got about in a minute. What are you seeing? Because there's a disconnect here, and you have two really strong candidates who the Democrats would not let in.
Well, I wanted to address first what the gentleman said about the people not really voting their economic interests. And, the problem you have here is both parties are responsible for neoliberalism and the devastating effects it had on the middle class. This was a product of both parties. And Joseph Biden, as senator, and one could say as president as well, has had a major role in advancing neoliberalism and all of its negativity. It's not just Ronald Reagan and people like Donald Trump, but this is bipartisan. So I think that needs to be stated. That it's not clear to me that if you're voting your pocketbook interest, you would necessarily vote in every case for the Democrats. You might very well vote third party. But in any case, I do think that there's another issue as well, given the fact that you have neither party doing very well on economics, neither party really addressing the massive skew in the distribution of wealth we've seen in the last 40 years. A lot of people will vote for the Republicans because the Democrats increasingly are showing disrespect for working people. There's a culture of disrespect toward working people. And I think people with advanced degrees don't see that, and they just think this is an absurd Fox News fabrication. But I think it's very much there. And I think that the tone of the way the Democrats are speaking, or we talk about intersectionality and everything, a lot of people who work at Walmart and things like that see that as disrespect, and they have a right to feel that way. And I think it's a reasonable response in my view. I don't think it justifies voting for Donald Trump, who I don't like personally, but I can understand the logic in it. I think just dismissing these people and saying they're bad people or they're ignorant or they're stupid only compounds the problem and underscores why these people will not vote for the Democrats. So a lot of this, I think, requires self-reflection by the Democrats and asking, what are we doing wrong? What have we been doing wrong for decades? and how can we fix it? Until the Democrats are willing to do that kind of self-criticism, which so far they are completely unwilling to do, I just see this problem continuing and addressing, more importantly, why they are so deeply wedded to neoliberalism and their responsibility for the economic problems we have today.
Robert Patillo, 1 minute.
I think people need to just think to themselves for a second. The fact that Donald Trump has been found liable for raping somebody, found guilty of $250 million in fraud, $2.5 million in fraud, $5 million in fraud, $25 million in fraud. You have a Republican Party that claims that they care about working class people, but the first thing Donald Trump did when he got in office was a $2 trillion tax cut for rich people. And the first thing Mike Johnson did when he became Speaker of the House was say, well, we'll give Israel some aid, but we have to cut $15 billion from the IRS because we don't want rich people paying taxes. And where your money is at is where your actual priorities are at. But despite all of that, and despite all the accomplishments the Biden administration can list off, is not the feeling that the American people have. The American people don't feel like unemployment is 3.4%. They don't feel like inflation's at 3.2%. They don't feel that America has this the most highly functioning economy in the entire industrialized world. And because of the lack of the ability of the Biden administration to get out there and actually talk to and feel and understand people, just as Dr. Gibbs was articulating, that if you're not able to have that I feel your pain index, or who do I want to sit down and have a beer with, who do I communicate best with, the people are not going to buy into it. So the Biden administration, the Biden campaign more so, is going to have to take a little time to do some soul searching to find out what exactly they need to do. And I think a big part of that is going to be, well, look, we sold this bill of goods to African Americans in 2020 and 2022 about what we're going to do, and we haven't done any of it. Let's try doing some of it, and maybe that will help. We sold this bill of goods to young people about what we're going to do. We haven't done any of it. Let's try doing some of it, and maybe that will help. And maybe those things will actually work on moving these numbers forward, but as long as they keep banging their head against the same wall, they're going to have the same results.
I'd stay right here on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel, everybody. We're going to continue this conversation for a few more minutes. Reverend Dr. Yuri, I've got 1 minute. Take us out.
Well, it's real quick. When I was selling cars, yes, I sold cars. The reason you don't sell the window sticker is because it's beyond the reach of folks to understand how to write a check for the whole thing. The issue is this administration has not translated. Yeah, you got low unemployment. Yeah, you got this, that, and the other. But they want to understand, why does bread cost so much and why is gas so high? And until they address the issues that are closer to ground level, they're going to continue to have problems, not just in polling, but in participation the closer we get to the election. They have an opportunity. There's still a window, but that window's closing quickly, and it remains to be seen whether or not finally this administration is going to get the message from the American people.
Stay right here on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel, everybody. Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. Going to respond to Angela. Angela Burns said she is with you, so not. Yes, she did. She said, I like what she's saying. Right, that's what Angela said. And of course, D. Ray said, the polls say Trump 33, Biden 36. I think Biden and Kamala got something to be very concerned about. I agree. We realize that, well, Finn says Democrats are liars. And Robert Williams says, I think an ABC poll has Black people polling at 22% for Trump. Oh, yeah, there's a lot going on, everybody. So let's talk about it on the Santita Jackson Show. Devin Andrikis, thank you for a great show. Watch out for him, everybody. He's a comer in the land of radio. I'm Santita Jackson. Stay right here on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. Let's just talk a little bit more. Love you, everybody. God bless you. Have a great day. Dwight, what do you say? The monster has become the martyr. I mean, his numbers are growing. They're not contracting. They're growing.
Well, we're not dealing with this, and it's how much of this is visceral. How much of this is that people believe that Trump is crooked, but he's transparent in his crookedness, and so they know how to measure that. They know how to process that. With Biden, you get something else. With Biden, you get somebody who's dishonest, but not transparent in his dishonesty. So they don't feel him the same way because they believe he's running the game. They don't believe Trump is running the game. They believe Trump understands the game and is playing the game. But they believe Biden is running game. And so a lot of folks just don't trust him. They don't think he's transparent. They think he is corrupt and is vile, but he has, empathy down to a science, and that he plays on people's emotion.
Well, respond to Angela Burns.
A lot of this is difficult.
She says, she speaks to you, Dwight. She says, how can that be, Mr. Dwight, when Trump is the epitome of corruption, her emphasis?
But he's transparent about it. He tells you, you understand, I'm out for myself and my family. I'm making, I play the system. I play to win. And so you know what you get in me. With Biden tries to play the same game without the same skill set. So you know his family is corrupt, but he lies about it. You know that he is pro-war, but he lies about it. You know that he and Netanyahu have much more in common than people would be led to believe, but he lies about it and acts like he's not supporting what Israel is doing. People can trust a crook that is honest about being a crook. But it's hard for them to trust somebody, a crook who lies to them and cons them and games them. And I think that's why so many people don't trust Biden, even though he, has this veneer of being the good guy. And why so many people trust Trump, even though they know that he, has flaws and is sinister. He's very transparent about that. He don't lie to you about who he is. Biden does lie to you about who he is.
Well, who was just laughing here?
This is Paul. I want to put a finer point on that. It's what this comes down to, and it's very real, is that there's a significant portion of the working class that romanticizes lawlessness. And so when Dwight was saying, he's playing the system, I'm just referring to one of my friends rents a room to a young college student from Eastern Oregon. And when we were talking over dinner one time, he was talking about how where he comes from, the heroes in his, where he comes from are people like D.B. Cooper and Bonnie and Clyde and John Dillinger and the great American bank robbers, as he put it. And I said, what? Why? And he said, because they beat the system. And I said, no, they didn't beat the system. They took your money. In those days, your money was not insured. They were violent, nasty, ugly criminals. Bonnie and Clyde were not Faye Dunaway and Warren Beatty. That was romanticizing them. They were nasty, ugly murderers. And he never heard that. He just thought, they beat the system. And so there's a significant portion of the working class that loves it that Donald Trump is a crook. I mean, if you're going to say Joe Biden's too old, and then say, so I'll vote for a guy who's a convicted rapist, a convicted liar, and is facing 91 counts, criminal counts in 4 different cases. And that's because Joe Biden is too old and Donald Trump is 3 years younger. No, this is what you want. You romanticize that because you think you can't get anywhere. Since I can't get anywhere, I'm just going to I hope nobody does. I'm just going to throw the whole damn board game on the floor.
But Paul,
like I did when I was 5 years old and I realized I just lost in Monopoly. I would throw the whole game on the floor and say, I quit.
No, but you know what? Paul, I hear you.
Class.
But I think that this whole thing, the way you control the opposition is to lead it. Saying that Biden is too old, that's what the press continue to say. That's not it. He and Trump are the same age. He's frail. No. He looks sick. Okay? People don't think that he is healthy. That's the issue. If he could be Methuselah's age, if he looked robust, people want Bernie to run. For heaven's sake, he's older than both of them. So that's not even it. But Trump is straight up with you about who he is and who he is not. And people appreciate that. Things have not been right since they blew out Kennedy's brains in the middle of the street in 1963. No one trusts authority in the United States and around the world. Nobody does. And now it's gotten even more. I mean, Dr. Gibbs, it's even worse. I asked my mother, who lived through the Kennedy assassination. I didn't do that. I said, Mom, what was the worst thing you've seen? And my mother's one of the few people who has known so many of these people, right? She didn't know Kennedy, but Dr. King, she knew him. She worked for him. Fred Hampton, she knew him. Dwight knew Fred Hampton. Dwight's worked with Reverend Jackson. I mean, these are people you knew. They were human beings, but you knew there was something really special about them, and you keep on going, right? And you look up, and you wake up one morning, and you find out that Fred Hampton and Mark Clark, his security, have been killed. And the narrative in the media, mind you, there was an FBI show that was one of the top 10 shows in the country at the time, Paul. Okay?
Yep.
Every Sunday night, they were the good guys.
Yep, from
Even
Jr.
though those of us in the civil rights space knew that these people were as crooked as an arthritic hand. You knew it. But guess what? They said the news reported it was a shootout between Fred Hampton, Mark Clark, and the police. It was Attorney G. Flint Taylor who went over to that apartment that morning and saw all of the bullet holes were facing toward their front door. So when you start talking to people, who have been raised on the teat of, you can't trust the Supreme Court now, you cannot trust any branch of government now. I mean, that's where Americans are. And Americans are getting angrier about it all the time.
I want to share something.
Okay, but very, very quickly, because I'm going to have to wrap this up. In a few minutes because I'm going to have to push out.
I just wanted to say about what's going on and how Biden is actually going to win. Biden's going to win because the Republican Party will implode. What we saw last week in the vote to get the Speaker of the House, in which they elected that Louisiana Republican Representative Mike Johnson. Obviously, very young. He's only been in his office and his position since 2016, and he's already the Speaker of the House. And they were unable to select a Speaker of the House for many, many votes. And what's interesting is that I believe that's how Biden is going to win, is because the Republican Party is going to implode from within. They have so many different candidates that are running at this time. There's only about 4 candidates that are currently running against themselves, really, in the Democratic Party. But all those candidates in the Republican Party, I believe they're going to implode. And I believe that's how Biden is going to win. And I think that's the game that Trump is not familiar with right now.
Oh, no, he's familiar with that.
He hasn't found a way to do it.
He's familiar.
Oh, he does.
Look,
Okay.
remember, remember in 2020, Trump lost because people were tired of him. Okay?
Yeah.
The fact that ain't working now. That ain't working because people don't feel materially their lives are better. And they think everybody's a mess. You saw this yesterday at Congressman Jackson's town hall meeting. I mean, he's about the only politician in Chicago, and Dwight gave him credit for that, who has stepped forward and leaned into this migrant crisis as an elected official.
And I have my opinions on that. I know I missed my opportunity to talk about it on your show, but I really do believe
we'll talk about it some more. But I needed to deal with this. I needed to deal with this today because I needed to deal with this today. So no, we can follow up with that. But
okay,
I mean,
I believe the Republican Party is going to implode. Biden is going to win because
the Democrats fall in love, the Republicans fall in line. They ain't going to implode. They're not imploding now. Trump has brought Republicans to the party, just like Bernie and Jesse Jackson brought Democrats to the party. These folks ain't thinking about that. They will ride that Trump horse if it will help them to eliminate Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid. They don't care who. They just need you to do it. Democrats want, I need to like you. Nobody cares about that. Not in power. Republicans could care less. They could care less. I'm going to get some closing thoughts from everybody here.
In 12 days. What are we going to do about that? Government's about to shut down.
Sweetie, I don't know. I didn't say I had the answers. I'm just telling you.
Come on, somewhere.
Hey, girl, I'm not Karnak the Magnificent with this beanie on my head. I ain't figured none of that out. None up yet. Oh, you know who? They might as well print up some more money like they did for Israel and Ukraine. Okay. cover the bills that way. Paper. It's only paper. Reverend Dr. Yeary, your final thoughts. Did Reverend Dr. Yeary go? Well, then, Dr. Gibbs, are you still there? Your final thoughts?
Yes, I'm still there. I think it's always a mistake to underestimate your opponent and to dismiss your opponent as merely crazy or irrational. I think when one looks at Trump voters, one can see there's a certain rationality to it, or at least people are leaning to Trump, or leaning to Kennedy, or Cornel West, as I'm leaning to Cornel West. I think what you have here is that you've had basically people, because of the higher level of inflation earlier on, people look at their paychecks and they go, people are making less now in real terms than they did under Trump. And so people compare their position under Biden, where the position got worse economically, to what it was under Trump. And they start to look a little bit favorable. Now, I don't think Trump did anything that made it this way. I think it was mostly lucky, but all the same, I think people look at the record of what Biden has done and look at their own personal situation and see that they're worse off now than they were when Biden was elected. And that's the way they make their judgment. I don't really think it has much to do with Fox News propaganda or emotionalism. I think from the standpoint of people making the judgment, it's a reasonable assessment. I don't think Trump's the answer. I think that's a bad call, but it's not as if it's completely crazy either. And also, as I said, there is this tone in the Democratic Party that seems to be, first of all, they have no idea what to do except to indict Trump again and again and again. Let's not forget 2 impeachments. They're just repeating the same strategy they've been using since 2015, and it never worked. And they're just doing it again and again. And I think people see through that as political. It's not based on justice, but it's based on politics, and they're probably right about that. So I don't think they're very influenced by that. So I think basically what you have here is an economic. Oh, and of course, there are the 2 wars, which are unpopular or will become increasingly unpopular over the next 12 months. So I think, if people ask why are people leaning to Trump, why are working class people leaning to Trump? I personally don't think it's a good move, and I don't think they should do that, but it's not crazy either. And I think dismissing it as crazy or is simply underestimating your opponent, underestimating the appeal of your opponent. And that's what the Democrats are doing, and that's why I think there's an excellent chance they're going to lose this election.
Well, I mean, that is, when Biden got on what is it, on Charlemagne the God show and said, hey man, you can't be black and vote for Trump. I'm like, are you serious right now?
Yeah.
I mean, come on, Robert Patillo. It's just that kind of it's hubris, really. It's an excessive pride and arrogance that is just foolish, and it has got the Democrats behind it. No, forget the Democrats. It's got us behind the 8 ball. I need someone to advocate for me. I got a Speaker of the House who wants to eliminate Social Security. Robert, he wants to cut Medicare and Medicaid. Robert, what? Robert Patillo? Did Robert go? Dwight McKee.
You have Dwight McKee and Attorney Sinat left.
Yes.
I mean, it's like there is no discussion about that. They're not dealing with the fact that these people, the reports are coming out that in private, Speaker Johnson is saying, okay, I'm pulling together a commission so that we can end Social Security. Social Security. What are people supposed to do? Democrats aren't even having that discussion, Dwight. I mean, at all.
No, they're not. I think I totally agree with the professor that there's a certain cultural elitism that comes out of the Democratic Party, and they don't feel like they have to appeal to or cater to a constituency. They feel like that they have all the answers, and because they're Democrats and they're better educated, that this should be a done deal just because they say it's a done deal. And that's not how America works, Mm-hmm. People are people. People have their own interests. People have their own things that are important to them, their own priorities. And unless you speak to those priorities, unless you speak to those values, then you don't have an instant connection with those people. I mean, even the evangelicals have an interest Now, people may see it as a radical, right-wing, counterproductive interest, but many of them don't believe in abortion. And they have the right not to believe in abortion.
That's right.
Many of them don't believe in gay rights, and they have that right to believe in that. And you just can't dismiss that because you don't believe in it, or because it's not your orientation. You have to have a strategy to explain yourself or to speak to their position. But when you have this cultural elitism, where you believe that your word should be law because it's your word, then you run the risk of alienating, a big part of the population. And I think that's what's happening. I think that's what's happening with Biden. And it's going to be very hard for them to overcome.
I mean, because Dr. Gibbs, this is what you hear with them all the time. And it's so condescending, the discussion. I mean, it's very Hollywood elite. I've been to these parties. I get it. And I've been to school with these folks. I get it. And it's like, are you all dealing with the fact that people out here are not eating? People are literally hungry in America today. Dr. Gibbs, I mean, it's just like that. It's like all the way that goes past them. Like, people are really hurting out here. Would you say, yeah, great, unemployment is here, but nobody's feeling it in a functional way because eggs cost more. By the time I leave the grocery store, I have not bought any protein and I've spent almost $100. The woman who checked me out in the grocery store, I told you a couple of months ago, she said, I can't keep up. And she's got a teenage son. She's trying to figure out every day how many meals she can miss because she's got to feed her child. That's how people in America are living. And if you want to win my vote, you need to speak to that. I don't care what party you're in. You need to speak to that. You need to speak to the people's pain. You need to make Janet Yellen answer me and tell me why it is that we can fund 2 wars, but I cannot get my public schools funded. I can't build another hospital in Chicago and in Mobile and in Jackson. We're closing hospitals everywhere. Why can't you fund MLK Hospital out in LA that serves Black and brown people? Why can't you do that? Why can't you ensure that Howard University still owns their hospital? Why can't you do that? And then you're going to give Ukraine and Israel $100 million? What? Billion, excuse me, with a B. I'm sorry. And then, but I'm boo-boo the fool. I'm the one who's silly. I'm the one who really doesn't understand. Don't understand what? What don't I understand? Tired of it. Why it's and people are being played, and people are sick. People cannot afford to go to the hospital. They cannot afford to go to urgent care. They cannot afford. And this is horrific. It's horrific. It's horrific.
And it would not be as insulting if at the same time you wasn't cutting back on the basic U.S. citizen capacity. That you then take $100 billion a month, every 2 months, and send it overseas for the purposes of dropping bombs on somebody. No. I mean, to the average American, to many Americans, it just does not make sense.
Wait a minute, well, I don't want you to do it, Dwight, wait a minute. Well, I don't want you to do it. Americans want a ceasefire, Dwight. Dr. Gibbs. They're like, don't do this. But you're going to take my money and do it anyway.
And then look me in the face and say, you're going to take it and like it.
Okay. So now go back on Charlamagne the God show and tell me that I'm not Black if I don't vote for you. Go back on somebody else's show and tell me that I'm not a Democrat if I don't vote for you. You just go on and try that out this time. Go on. Let's see if it works for you. Keep it up. In the meantime, morally, we are going to hell in a handbasket. We are shooting each other. We're shooting up with all kinds of drugs. Americans are hurting themselves, and people around the world are looking at us and they're saying this grand experiment is going horribly wrong, Dr. Gibbs. This is awful. We opened the show with Dr. Shanina Knighton talking about mental health issues. Americans are struggling. And you will struggle a lot when you have no money. The public schools are not collapsing, they're being collapsed. You're reducing the options of the life options of people all throughout this country. It's not right. It's not right. You squeeze and kill Venezuela, so 7.3 million of them have become a diaspora. And then we're angry with them. Instead of being angry with a foreign policy that has jammed up people all over the world and that sends them running away from home and running here, where they could recreate their homes here because they're so homesick. Have you thought about that? You got a little Haiti wherever you go. Wherever you see Haitians, they got a little Haiti. You got a little Mexico. You got a Ukraine village. Because we keep interfering in people's stuff. And these people are homesick and they come here. And you won't take care of Americans. Yeah. I'm tired of it. Do that. Take care of Americans. Stop interfering with other people and make it right in Venezuela. Make it right in Bolivia. Make it right in Argentina. Make it right wherever we go. Make it right in South Africa. Just make it right. The CIA and MI6 got Mandela put in prison. We've been collaborating with these broke down British for 400 years. And what has it gotten us? We're as broke as they are now. All they do is hold the money in the city of London, which is in the middle of London, England. You ought to get tired of that. You ought to get tired of getting gamed. Be tired of it. Be tired of it. Anyone else have anything else they want to say before we go? Dwight? Dr. Gibbs? You know I go off. It just gets to be too much. It gets to be too much. We got to be tired of being
good.
Okay. All right. Well, I love you both. And I thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I love you, everybody. Like and share the show. I will see you. Yeah, that's right, Joyce. I said hell in a handbasket. You know, we sit up and we diminish people who believe what they believe, who feel how they feel. And you expect to win friends. And I mean, you're telling people how they need to raise their kids. You're supposed to do that. It's not right. I don't want the government raising my children or telling me how I'm supposed to behave in my home. That's my business. And this cancel culture we ought to be at the end of it. It's just ridiculous. People believe what they believe for a whole lot of reasons, and you need to respect that. Let your beliefs get in the marketplace of ideas and may the majority win. But you know what? The majority should not become the tyrannical party either. You need to respect the people who you defeated. Lonnie Guinier, God rest her soul, said, we've got to go up in our politics. We can't have I win, you lose strategy. We have to have, I got more this time. Let me figure out how I can make you satisfied. So we're not at odds with each other. So we're not enemies. So we can figure out how to function together. How about that? Think about it, everybody. I love you, love you, love you. And hey, Troy, you're very welcome. What D-Ray, you said you just got to shake him 5 times by the collar, girl, please. And what did Robert Williams say? Libya, Guatemala, Venezuela, Nicaragua. I mean, it just keeps on going. It just keeps on going. It's got to stop. We're the biggest mischief makers in the world. We deserve better. We need to do better. And more than that, we need to do right. Forget doing better. Need to do right. So I love you, everybody. Love you, Dwight. Love you, Dr. Gibbs. Love you, Devin. Love you, Morning Stars. Wouldn't do it without you. Love you, everybody. Like and share the show. Like and share the show. I will see you tomorrow on the Santita Jackson Show. Love you, everybody. God bless. Thank you, Dwight.